What happens when a rising star is erased before the world even realizes she was there?
A couple days later, I went back and he had the contract signed, all made up and written up, and I signed it, and that was the beginning of the end.
In the early 1990s, Beverly Peele was everywhere. Chanel runways before 16, Vogue covers while other teenagers sat in classrooms, Versace closings with a walk that made the room stop. For a moment, the industry sold her as the future set to stand beside Naomi, Cindy, and Linda. Then, almost as fast as it began, it ended. One season she was everywhere, the next she was gone, erased completely not because she failed, because the machine decided she no longer mattered. But before the silence, before the vanishing, there was the rise. Beverly Peele was not a product of some fairy tale discovery, plucked from a shopping mall or spotted on a street corner by chance. She was born in Los Angeles in 1975, a city built on performance and appearance, and from the age of 12, she was already working in the world of modeling. By 13, she was booking steady jobs. By 14, she was gracing covers that most adults would kill to land. There was no grand plan, no carefully mapped out route to superstardom. She was simply a girl whose presence was too striking to ignore, who could step in front of a camera and make it feel like she belonged there. But this wasn't the life of a teenager balancing school with weekend hobbies. It was the life of a professional steering an adult industry. While classmates were concerned with prom dates and driver's licenses, Beverly was dealing with contracts, flights, and fittings. She was not born into wealth or influence. There were no family connections to ease her path. What she had was raw ability, sharpened quickly by the expectations of agents, photographers, and designers who treated her less like a child and more like an investment. The pace was unforgiving, the pressure was immense. She was working in an environment that chewed up even seasoned adults, but she kept proving that she could deliver. And almost immediately, that proof became a spectacle. By the time most teenagers are just figuring out who they are, she was walking for Chanel in Paris. By the age of 16, she landed a Vogue cover, the kind of milestone that defined entire careers. And within a year, she was closing shows for Gianni Versace. While the spotlight was on her, the cameras flashed and music thumped, and her walk so assured that even veterans turned their heads. It wasn't a gradual climb, it was a sudden eruption. Then her career exploded during the supermodel boom, the golden age when names like Naomi Campbell, Cindy Crawford, and Linda Evangelista were treated like rock stars. Beverly was younger than all of them, yet already sharing space in magazines, campaigns, and front rows. She worked with Richard Avedon, with Donna Karan, with Mugler. Her look was elegant in couture, fierce in streetwear, and flawless in commercial spreads. For editors, she was a dream. For designers, she was a muse. And for the press, she was the next big story. They called her the next Naomi Campbell. Not because she walked like Naomi or posed like her, but because the industry couldn't imagine more than one young black superstar at a time. The comparison was both a compliment and a limitation. She wasn't trying to be anyone else.
You don't get paid as much as, you don't get like $1 million contract. Let's say, a white model would get like a $35,000 contract or something.
She was trying to work, to survive, to build a career that might last beyond her teenage years, but just as quickly as she rose, life threw her something the industry had no room for. Fast forward to 1993, Beverly Peele was now 17 years old and already one of the most in-demand models of her generation. But then she learned she was pregnant. In any other profession, this might have been met with support, even celebration. But in fashion, it was the parallel of career death. The calls didn't stop all at once. They slowed. Bookings disappeared, casting lists no longer included her name, and the silence grew louder. Without anyone saying a word, the message was clear. She had made herself unmarketable. The industry has rules that it never speaks aloud. One of the most brutal ones is that pregnancy disqualifies you. A model can be edgy, strange, even scandalous, but she cannot be visibly a mother. The image of youth and freedom that Beverly had been hired to sell was suddenly incompatible with reality. Her pregnancy was treated not as a personal milestone, but as a professional flaw. The whispers spread fast. Agents speculated about her marketability. Editors quietly moved on. Designers who had once relied on her presence on the runway now cast other faces. She had not broken a contract, insulted a client, or failed a job. She had only chosen to bring life into the world, and for that she was erased. Her punishment wasn't written in headlines. It was written in absence: the jobs that never came, the calls that never rang, the silence that grew heavier by the day. Beverly still managed to find work, but the jobs were different catalog shoots, regional brands, editorial filler pieces instead of prime features. She was still modeling, but not as the girl who had been called the future. It wasn't just a loss of prestige. It was a rewriting of history, a deliberate forgetting that told her she no longer fit the story fashion wanted to tell. And the cruelest detail is that she was only 18 at the moment. At the age when most people are just starting to imagine their futures, Beverly was already being treated like a relic of the past. In the years that followed, she focused on raising her daughter, Cairo, while taking whatever work she could find. It wasn't the spotlight anymore, it was survival. But life wasn't done testing her. On May 10th, 2010, she was driving with her teenage daughter, Cairo, when the car accident happened. The crash left them both seriously injured, their bodies broken by the force of impact. Beverly was rushed to UCLA Medical Center and placed in intensive care. Reports described multiple fractures and internal injuries, the kind that take months, sometimes years, to heal. For a model whose career depends on her body, the physical toll was devastating. This wasn't a scandal that could be spun away with good publicity. It wasn't a quiet gap in her resume that could be glossed over. Trauma is not temporary in the way fashion demands. It lingers in the bones. It shapes the mind. It slows the body in ways no editor or designer can overlook. Beverly had already faced erasure once before, but this time the struggle was not with the industry, it was with survival itself. And when survival became the only goal, Beverly stopped pretending. She did the most dangerous thing a model could do. She told the truth. In fashion, models are taught early on to keep their struggles hidden, to smile through exhaustion, to pretend that the work is always glamorous and the money is always steady. But Beverly Peele spoke openly about the truth that most models would never dare admit. She said she was broke, living paycheck to paycheck. She said she was struggling to keep up with bills, with life, with the reality of being a woman who once earned thousands a day, but was now barely scraping by. Her admission shattered the illusion that the industry works so hard to maintain. A former Vogue cover star was not supposed to reveal that she was financially unstable. She was supposed to smile, stay quiet, and keep the myth alive. But Beverly's honesty became her act of rebellion. By speaking out, she refused to play along with the false image of endless wealth and effortless success. But the most difficult truth was still waiting, one she had never spoken aloud. It was the year 2021 when Beverly Peele broke the silence that had been weighing on her for years. She filed a civil lawsuit against Canadian fashion executive Peter Newgort, one of the most powerful men in the industry.
Beautiful, amazing 70s style house on the beach, and this man who looked like Siegfried and Roy on the television, and Robin Leach was interviewing him or something about the lifestyles of the rich and famous, and then I hear this man with an accent come behind me and say in my ear, "Now pay attention because I'm going to quiz you after," or "This is your future husband," and he said some other kind of jokes, and I turn around and it's Mr. Peter Nygaard.
She alleged that her son, Trey, had been conceived in a non-consensual encounter years earlier. It was a claim that carried deep personal pain, but Beverly chose to bring it into the light. She spoke publicly about the experience, about how she had carried the weight of that violation in silence while raising her son. She called him her superhero, saying he was the reason she finally had the strength to share what happened. The risk was enormous. The press mentioned her story only briefly, often as a footnote in coverage about Nygaard, but Beverly refused to let her truth be buried. She had been forgotten once. This time, she wouldn't allow it. The coverage was almost invisible. The fashion press that had once branded her the future treated her lawsuit as a passing mention, a side note in the downfall of a powerful man. Her name appeared in articles, but rarely as the focus. That silence was as loud as any headline. It showed how quickly the industry could distance itself from uncomfortable realities. It was easier to erase her again than to confront what her story revealed about the system itself. She wasn't given the same spotlight that once followed her everywhere. Instead, she was met with the same indifference that had ended her career years before. And that carried a second insult, the way her life was reduced to a lesson, a story not of power or survival, but of warning flattened into a what not to do, instead of what it really was. But that framing misses the point. She wasn't a failure. She wasn't simply unlucky. She was a teenager who became a supermodel in a system designed to use her youth, her beauty, and her energy until she no longer fit the mold. And yet, she is still here. She is raising her children, speaking her truth, and refusing to let silence define her life. Her survival is not just resilience, it is resistance. Every time she chooses to speak, she reclaims space in an industry that once erased her. Beverly Peele's story isn't just about one model. It's about the machine she was trapped inside. Fashion thrives on youth, but punishes women the moment they step into real adulthood. Pregnancy is treated as a betrayal. Aging is treated as a decline. Resistance is treated as defiance. The system feeds on silence, and when silence isn't enough, it erases. Beverly didn't vanish because she wasn't talented enough. She did because she refused to fit into rules designed to keep women small and disposable. And yet, the very system that tried to erase her could not finish the job. She carried her story forward. Today, Beverly Peele is still standing. She has spoken about pain, about loss, about betrayal, but also about endurance. Her words carry the weight of someone who has lived through fire and refuses to be consumed by it. The industry erased her from its glossy pages, but Beverly rewrote herself into the record by telling the story they wanted hidden. "I survived everything they threw at me," she said. And that survival is her final, unshakable truth. If you believe voices like Beverly's deserve to be heard, then don't let this one disappear, too. Hit the like button, speak in the comments, and subscribe so forgotten stories can finally be seen. Because silence protects the system, but your attention can break it.